In fact, in most situations, 10 to 15 years of job history is the most you should include. Things like marital status, child status, age, politics, and religion don't really belong on a resume. A photo may belong on a resume in certain industries, or if it's very common in the country you're applying in. So you need to check into local customs if you're not familiar with them. In general, otherwise, shouldn't be on there. It's also not a list of your job descriptions and responsibilities. What you need to do is to highlight what you achieved and how you did it. What you select to include and the order you put it in under each job title should be in line with what would be most relevant for the job and employer that you're applying to. And lastly, it's not an account of your career aspirations. The employer isn't looking for you to tell them that this is your dream job on your resume. When an employer is looking at a resume, they care about one thing: what's in it for them? And this is why you don't put an objective statement on a resume. So we know what a resume is not. What is a resume? It's your marketing document. It has one goal: to get you an interview. So now I'm going to have a true or false question. And let me share my screen. And I want you to take a look at this question and tell me if you think this is true or false. So, true or false? Women apply to a job when they meet 75% of the qualifications.
True.
True.
Give you a moment to think about it.
Input is already popping in the chat section.
Okay.
I think the answer tends to go to true.
Yeah? Are we ready? The answer is false. There was an internal report at Hewlett-Packard that revealed that women only apply for open jobs if they think they meet 100% of the criteria, when men would apply for the jobs if they think they met 60% of the criteria. There's a very famous quote that was in Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In that references this. It's gotten around a lot, but that's the difference in applying. So here's what you should know. You don't need to meet all the qualifications to apply for a job. There is an exception to this if anyone's applying in the US, which I'm including on my slide because I want to be accurate. So there's an exception in the USA for companies that have federal contracts. If you are applying in the USA, I've included a link at the very end of my slides that you can look at and go in depth about it if you're interested in it. But in general, you do not need to meet all of the requirements of a job to apply for it. Speaking as a recruiter who sits on the other side of a table, or in this case, the other side of a video screen with a hiring manager, a lot of times some of those hard requirements are wish list items, and we don't always manage to weed them out before a job goes live. And too often desired skills are in there as required skills. There are cases where you could meet 60% of the qualifications and still be in the running for a job. But in that case, you need to have some extra help, like a reference in the company that strengthens your application. There are companies that have processes in place that if there's a referral, someone has to have a conversation with that person, as opposed to a job application that comes into a portal that may get a rejection email or a phone call. But I have seen companies with a policy that if there's a referral, at least someone has to talk to them briefly and see if they're qualified. So if you're less qualified for a position, like around 60, 70%, you need to focus on your transferable skills in your resume. When you're interacting and speaking with people, you need to exude confidence. You need to show a lot of enthusiasm for the job, and a cover letter to show your added value would help a lot. So when you apply, sometimes you don't hear back. as I said, I think we've all had this experience, and you wonder, what happened to my application? When you apply in a job portal, usually you'll upload your resume. Sometimes it'll make you go through several pages of filling in your information again, which no one likes. If you're lucky, you've got an ATS, which is the system you applied into, that parses the information from your resume fairly accurately, and you don't have to clean it up much if you're lucky. Unfortunately, it doesn't always happen. How you format your resume, if you throw in some graphs, if you throw in some underlines, that can affect whether it parses well or not. So, got a share here of the process. So, you upload your resume, you filled out your application. This is what actually happens and what we see on our end. It goes into the ATS, and there's no way around the ATS. I know there are articles out there saying beat the ATS, go around the ATS. The truth is, one way or another, you're going in the ATS, because the interview schedules go in the ATS, the approvals go in the ATS. When you get hired, you have a file created in the ATS. It's an HR system, and it's usually hooked up to the HRIS system. So one way or another, you're going to deal with an ATS. The thing a lot of people think is once your resume goes in there, that a human being never looked at it. They think that there are algorithms in this system that is automatically sorting out and rejecting resumes, and that's why they got rejected quickly. Fact is, sometimes I'll be in the ATS and an application came in and I happen to click on it. Wasn't a good match, and I go ahead and send the, thank you for applying, but we're not going to be continuing with you email, and maybe you thought a bot was in there. It's not. There are no ATS bots rejecting your applications. It was a human being. Recruiters, HR, in the rare instance, a hiring manager, human beings review your resume. They show up to us in that system as attachments. And based on looking at that, we decide, are we going to put you on a short list to consider, or are we going to say, no, not for this role? And this is why all those articles saying you should keyword stuff your resume isn't really helpful. You need keywords from the job description, yes, but they need to be shown within context. There's not an algorithm using them to reject you. What there might be at some point is a recruiter who's got another position open, decides to do some searches in their own system to see if there are any likely candidates for that job that you never applied to. So the keywords are important, but not for what you think they're important for. And it's not unheard of for a corporate recruiter who contacted you out of the blue to say, hey, I've got this job that you might be good for. And again, they're asking you to apply. In the ATS, they've got you shared your resume with them, you had a conversation, but then they want you to go into this job portal and apply. And I can tell you why. I have worked for companies where they would not allow the recruiter to upload the candidate's information and CV into the system. It was company policy. That was part of their GDPR policy. The candidate would have to actually create an account with a login to upload this stuff. The other side of that, if an offer came through for that candidate, it would be coming out of the same system, and they would log into the account they already set up to accept or reject their offer. So that's a good thing to know about the ATS.
There's also a question in the chat, Sharon.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Julia wants to know what happens with the data. Does the company keep it? And if yes, then for how long?
Yes, the company does keep the data for a certain period of time. I do not have the regulation on that under GDPR handy. There is a limit on it. You will probably see some kind of little box that you can check saying, yes, the company can keep my data for up to 1 year or 6 months or whatever. You do have the right. Sorry, what?
Can I help you with that, Sharon? It's
Yeah,
it's 4
great.
weeks.
4 weeks. Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
if you're not hired.
Mm-hmm. But there, I have seen where you can check a box and they can keep it longer, but you have to get permission, right?
Yes, I also have similar experience. I think up till 6 to 8 months, they can save it, but then they need to take consent
Yes.
from the candidate.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can also instantly revoke consent. I've seen that too recently in an email saying you can revoke consent for having your information in there. So they give you a choice, but that's only if you fall under GDPR. So a lot of people wonder, how do recruiters look at resumes? Because we're the people usually in a larger organization looking at your resume first. And the answer is we look at pretty quickly because we look at hundreds of them. There was a study done by the Ladder's career site in 2018. They used eye tracking technology to see how long recruiters look at resumes. And they did a study back in, I think, 2012 as well. And at that point, it clocked in at 6 seconds, which is what you see it quoted a lot. But there's an updated study and it came in at 7.4 seconds. And to give a caveat to that, you're thinking, yeah, but how can you know what you're looking at in 7.4 seconds? Before we look at that resume, we have meetings with hiring managers. We go through the job descriptions with them. Sometimes we meet with team members as well. We get acclimated to it. We make sure we know what we're looking for. And if there's keywords in there and there are related keywords, there are technologies sometimes where they'll quote one, but there are related technologies, we'll make notes. We keep this in mind. This is why we can look at a resume in 7.4 seconds, because by the time we're looking at them, we should know what we're looking for. And this is just the first pass. You're not being completely judged in 7.4 seconds. The 7.4 seconds is the maybe. And then we take a second look. So you have 7 seconds to make that first impression and get us to take a second look at this. The other thing you should know is common reading patterns mean that, and the fact that it shows as a pop-up in the ATS means the first third of your resume is very critical to capture attention. So content, of course, is the most important thing on your resume. Using the right format is key to make sure your content is easily found. So here is an example of a resume I created for a web developer to discuss what the format should look like most of the times in a resume for someone who has like maybe, I don't know, 3 or more years of experience. So you'll see the name is at the very top, and then we have a title, and that title should be aligned with the job you're applying for, what you're targeting, because you want them to see your name and immediately connect it with that's what you are. Then you'll have a location, depending on whether you're just uploading a resume in an ATS or if you're posting it on a job portal, you may want to not include more than a city. If you're doing it if you're uploading it to a job portal, you'll probably have to put a full address in there. You want to make sure you have your phone number and an email address. And please make sure your email address is a professional looking one and not something you'd rather not have your future boss see. And then a URL. So the most common one you'll see is LinkedIn. And speaking as a recruiter, if I'm interested in your resume, I will definitely go and check out your LinkedIn profile. If you're a developer, you might want to put a GitHub profile in there. If you've got a really impressive GitHub presence, I would advise putting it in there. Just be aware, we're not going to go right to the GitHub and not look at your resume. Your resume needs to have a lot on there. That's an add-on that we would look at later. If you're not, in development, software development, maybe you're in marketing or something like that, and you have a really impressive portfolio on a professional website, you could put that there. And then the next part, traditionally, it used to be that people would put objectives here, like my objective is to get such and such job at such and such type company, blah, blah, blah. This is my dream job. Yeah, don't do that. What you need to do here is a type of elevator pitch. And you'll see that this one is quite specific. It shows some accomplishments in there. It tells you who they are, what they can do for you. And then you want to jump right into your job experience. And you want to do that in reverse chronological order. This is what hiring managers expect. And if they see something that isn't it, the first thing they do is start looking in your resume to see what you're trying to hide. So go with reverse chronological order. You'll want to use enough white space to make sure that it's easy to read. You'll want to list your job titles in bold, again, to make sure they stand out when you're scanning through 7 seconds. You want to make sure that stands out, the company name, your dates. It's good to give a little context right under it, and then go right into your achievements that will have your job duties buried in them, but they're presented in a way of, I accomplished this, this is how I did it. After that, and you can't see it on here because I'm just showing the first top of a resume. If you have a skills section, you could do something like technologies, languages, that sort of thing. And then your education would be on there. Now, if you're making a career change, this is going to look a little different. You would have a skills section right under the profile before you get to the experience, because you're trying to sell them on, this is what I can do. And then you would have your experience listed in reverse chronological order again, but you need to connect your dots in your skills section because that's the situation you're in. If you're a new grad and you're going right out of school or maybe a year out of internships, you could put your education at the very top, or you could put it right under a few internships, depending on if you were coming from a really famous school or something like that. So that's what it looks like. Again, use enough white space to make sure you can scan through it quickly. Use black text, stick to a simple, consistent font, bold your job titles and your sections, and don't underline, because I understand some ATS systems do not parse well with underlining. Use bullet points. And in most cases, 2 pages is the max.
Karen?
Yes.
If I may ask.
Yes.
Related to if we want to do a career change, right?
Yes.
So you already mentioned that then the skills would go above the experience.
Yes.
What about the role that's below our name? So what do we want to put there in that case?
What you're applying to.
But
well, yeah, you want them to think that this is what, I am say this web developer decided they wanted to be a programmer.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that title is going to go there. And the skills that prove they can do that title are going to be right between the profile and the experience. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yes. So we always put there what we're applying for.
Yes.
Thank you.
Or something similar. It doesn't have to be the exact same title, because some companies have slightly different titles, of course, but it should be close.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. And then I want to get into accomplishments, because as I said, your resume is not a list of just duties at your job, which is what you would probably see in the job description. You want to show them what you did, how you did it, and why that's valuable to them. And there are things to keep in mind with this. Start your bullet points with strong action verbs. Avoid passive verbs if you can. And I do have a link at the end of the slides that has a list of over 100 strong action verbs you can take a look at to, shine up your resume. You'll want to quantify your bullet points with numbers when possible. And I know some people don't work with numbers that much. I've been there myself in former jobs. which is why there is a very good article on how you do that if you don't work with numbers well. Tips I used myself many years ago. And the other thing I've got here is Google's XYZ formula, which is very helpful in putting together these accomplishments with quantification. So you accomplished X as measured by Y by doing Z. And I've got a couple of examples here of before and after. So you can see, let's take the second one. 1 second place in a hackathon. Okay, that's good. And then we got diving into the details. 1 second place out of 15 teams in the PEQI hackathon, working with 3 TU Delft colleagues to implement a quantum Byzantine agreement using protocol zoo. Now, which one as a hiring manager would you be more interested in speaking to? I think
obviously the second one.
Yes. And the first one's good, actually. Develop API platform for segmentation, personalized recommendations, and omni-channel messaging. Impressive. Second one's much better. Reduce cart abandonment by 37%, increasing online sales by 1.25 million in 90 days by developing an API platform for segmentation, personalized recommendations, and omni-channel messaging. That's practically a mini elevator pitch, and it's in your bullet points. So, and the other thing you need to think about when you're submitting these resumes is you're going to need to tailor them to the jobs you're applying to, because your job descriptions are not going to look all the same. And there may be some things that some companies are looking for a little more than others, and maybe you have that, but you didn't have it on the last resume. So you're thinking, this is going to take a lot of time to do. And this is why you should have a master resume. A master resume is a big document that's got every job you ever had and everything you did there on it. And you keep that in a Word file separately. You update it as you do things so you can keep track of it. So this is why you should constantly be keeping track of what you're doing, and when you have, like, you know, an aha moment or a well done moment at work, keep all this in a master file. Then you can pull this to make a new resume, to customize a resume. You can pull it when you're practicing for those first recruiter calls you're going to have, you know, so you can have a story there. Add your hero stories as they happen. It'll make you feel much more empowered when it comes time to search for a job, because you've accomplished more than you think. Keep track of it. Use it. See, you can tell a story like Business Cat would. So now we're going to talk about contacting when recruiters contact you while you're applying to jobs. I think, like many of you, I've applied to a multiple number of jobs at a time. I've recently gone through this. And your phone starts ringing and you look at it and you don't know who's calling. And in the past I've found, and as a recruiter I know, I found out that that first call, if you pick it up and you don't know who you're talking to, it doesn't matter. The recruiter's still going to screen you right then and there when you pick up the phone. So what we do is we find an application we like. We say, okay, we need to talk to this person, see if the paper is telling the truth, is there more there? So we pick up the phone and we give you a call out of the blue. You don't know we're doing it. We just give you a call. And this is known in the biz as a recruiter phone screen. It's usually the first step in an interviewing process. And like your resume, you have one chance to make a first impression when you're taking that call. So this is why when you're doing these applications and you're going through this process, you need to have a strategy. You need to keep track of your applications and notes. There are many ways to do this: spreadsheets, Chrome extensions, job search organizing websites, apps, and that little green star means I've got a link at the last slide that's got a whole article with a bunch of those in that you can use. You should screen your calls. Make sure your voicemail message sounds professional and that your voicemail is turned on. Check your LinkedIn messages, your SMS, your WhatsApp, your email, and your voicemail daily. I have been contacted by all these methods in the last few months when I was a candidate. Also, keep an eye on your spam folder. I've had things from recruiters that I should have been in contact with land in there. As a recruiter, I even had one candidate whose offer letter and contract landed in a spam folder, and I called him and had him look in it, and he found it while we were on the phone. So make sure you do keep track of that. And then I want to talk about when recruiters reach out to you. And this is when person you never heard of, you didn't apply to a company, they send you a LinkedIn message, or somehow they got your phone number or your email address and they reach out to you. There are primarily three kinds of recruiters that would reach out to you. One is an agency recruiter. I think we're all familiar with that. That's someone who does not work specifically for the company that the job is at. They may have been told by the company to recruit for them. They may not have. They may be doing it to get that company as a client and using you as their product. And that's why when an agency recruiter calls you, I always ask them, do you have, an actual, opdracht in Dutch, has the company signed something with you? Are you representing them, or are you trying to represent them? And are you exclusive, or is it winner takes all, whoever sends the CV first, which is often the case? There's the corporate recruiter. That's the person who works inside the company itself. When this person reaches out to you, you know things just got real. And then there's RPO. And with RPO, you can think of that as the same thing as a corporate recruiter, but they may not have the name of the company on their LinkedIn profile because the company is their client. That means the company has a contract with them, with their organization, and they are doing corporate recruiting for that company. So these are the three types of recruiters that could reach out to you, and you need to keep this in mind when you're dealing with them. Also be prepared to be asked about salary. It never fails. Never tell them what your salary is. A good recruiter shouldn't ask it. I still get asked it sometimes. Be prepared to be asked about what your salary expectations are, and understand that that means negotiation is starting the moment numbers get thrown out. If you can, get them to give you a range. I've almost always gotten them to give me a range. And if you're interested, set a time for that introduction call. Don't get yourself caught off guard, because you only have one chance to make that first impression. And just taking a look at the slide, this is the list of resources that you can refer to. The first is about that USA hiring thing that I mentioned, where, like Amazon or Google have federal contracts, so you actually do have to meet all job requirements to be hired. So if you're in the USA applying, it applies to you. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. How to do your resume bullets with numbers if you don't work with them, action verbs, and ways to organize your job search. So I hope that was helpful, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Sharon. There are a few questions in the chat, so let me read out to you.
Okay.
Question from Lucia was a follow-up after the question about for how many months or for what period of time the companies can save the data. Mm-hmm. And then her question is, what happens if you upload a different type of resume to the same job application within a few weeks?
What, to the same job or to the same company?
I hope Lucia is with us. Lucia, can you please explain what your question exactly means?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've been applying for a few jobs this past month, and I realized that my resume didn't match the job description. So I updated my other resume to the same job description.
Was it a portal where you had an account and you logged in, or did you just apply all over again?
I just applied all over again.
In that case, I would find out who the recruiter is and reach out to them and let them know.
Thank you.
Hope that answers your question, Lucia.
Yes.
All right. We also have a question from Naveen, who wanted to ask about what kind of bullets should we use, circles or squares? And yeah.
Well, in the resume, it's in the LinkedIn profile, you can get fancy because I use them there too. In your resume, just go with a full round dot, like what you saw in the sample resume. It's easier to see. The circles, you don't see them as much. A filled in round dot stands out more, so you're going to be able to scan through it faster. I mean, whenever you think, should I use this or this? Think, if I'm scanning this thing in 6 seconds, what's going to help me see it faster? Look at it from that point of view.
That's a good point. Yeah. We also have a question from Marcia. I see Marcia on screen. Would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if, Sharon, is this a replacement of the traditional covering letter?
Well, no, it's not. There are some places that will still require you to submit a cover letter. There are companies that absolutely don't want you to submit a cover letter. And I'll tell you from my personal experience, I have never seen a manager read a cover letter before they looked at the resume. In fact, I've usually had to twist their arm to get them to read the cover letter. If I got one that was really worth reading, which unfortunately they're not often worth reading, I have pointed out to them literally before Corona Tide, stood over their shoulder, put a copy of it in front of them and pointed to it to get them to read a cover letter. The resume, you shouldn't rely on your cover letter to show something your resume doesn't, because it may not ever get read. That's the honest truth. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you know why I'm asking, considering you've seen mine.
Well, like I said, if I give a really impressive cover letter, and I've had a handful in my time, I take the time to read them. I personally don't like writing them. I'll be honest. I don't like writing them, and mine probably suck. But I have seen the rare good one. Yeah.
No, I was more talking about my extensive.
Yeah. But like I said, the resume is leading. That is your marketing document. The cover letter is supplemental.
Yeah, I'll reach out to you on LinkedIn to discuss how we can maybe update my one.
Sounds good. It's good to see you
again.
again.
Long, thank you. Yeah, different look, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks, Marcia. Sharon, is it okay if we copy paste the links from your PPT? Yeah, a lot of people are interested.
Mm-hmm.
All right, done that. I also have a question. Of late, I noticed on the job resumes, or let's say on LinkedIn, when recruiters post the job, they practically ask everything. So, you have, of course, there is a requirement which says you need to be this, this, and this, but then they also ask supplementary things, which I would say are probably not even needed for my job. So how do you deal, or how do you filter out? Because yeah, I can filter out the job, but what if I don't want to? What if I really want to apply to that job and I don't meet those requirements? So
well, did they have it? Well, I'm sorry for interrupting, but did they have it all under one section, or did they divide it up between requirements and preferred, or was it one big section of bullet points?
It's one big section. So I always look if they are asking for preferred skills, and that's where you can actually negotiate.
Yeah, the whole blah, blah, blah is in pray, or, is a desired or a nice to have. What I always try to do, I don't succeed because I don't always have, the decision-making capacity. I try to have them divided up into a section of requirements and nice to haves. But that doesn't know, and that's why it's good to know that you don't have to meet every qualification to apply. If you're not sure about something, if you've got a contact in the company, ask them, is this really required? If you're unsure about it, or if you're like me, it's like, why not? I'll apply, and if it's not required, it's not required. And if it is and I don't have it, then you don't know if you don't try.
That's true. My question more was, how do we, do we make a different kind of contact in this case, or we just apply normally like we do and then wait for the call, because it's always possible you never hear back. So I was just trying to look at that option.
Oh, a lot of times you can't even find the recruiter on there. You have to go into their company and see if you can find them, because they don't have a contact information on there, probably because they don't want their inbox flooded. I've had hiring managers tell me that's why they won't share a job on LinkedIn, because the last time they did, they had like 1,000 people reach out to them to apply, and they didn't have the capacity to it. There's a reason recruiters or HR, in Sabine's case, are the ones that are, looking at these resumes. If a hiring manager was doing that, they wouldn't have time to do their job. So, yeah.
Yeah, indeed. If I may add to that, because I've been following the trends lately, and I've seen that a lot of LinkedIn influencers are now recommending that once you apply for a job, that you also try to find who the hiring manager is and send him a personal message on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tip I've seen all over the place in the last few months. So what do you think about that, Sharon?
Depends on your hiring manager, really. That's going to be very personal. I've done it sometimes. I honestly usually don't do it. Again, because these tips, like you said, are from influencers. So that means a lot of people are going to start doing it. You can try. I think it may be more helpful if it's a larger organization to maybe reach out to someone in the same department who does what you want to do, and talk to them, not with an ask. You don't want to start the relationship with an ask. Start the relationship from a point of curiosity. It's like, do you like working there? I find what you're doing interesting, and and then eventually, if they respond, are these things really required? That sort of thing. You can reach out to the hiring manager. Your mileage may vary in how that turns out.
Yeah, it's a good tip. Thank you. I think it's mostly for the very, very big tech companies these days, where for one vacancy there are thousands of people applying, and everybody just looks for a way to stand out in the crowd, because maybe for most of those people, their resumes are already in a good form, in a good shape, with everything in there. So because of there's so much competition, everybody just looks for a new way to stand out.
Yeah, and that's why networking can be important in that instance, but that's something you should have already been working on, and not necessarily straight to the top. You want to do your ground game first, I think. Another thing to realize is when you have that many resumes coming in. Oh, I'm getting an echo. So when you have that many resumes coming in, you will probably have a good number of qualified candidates, and recruiters only have so much capacity in how many interviews they're going to get hiring managers to agree to take. So if you don't get in early enough, you may not be considered for it, just because they had so many qualified candidates. Even though you were just as qualified, they're further along in the process. You saw it a week or two too late. Realize that happens. That can happen to people who are really qualified for jobs, and the timing was just wrong because of the big response.
Thank you. Thank you for your answers. And I think there are more questions coming in the chat. Orla says, is it okay to ignore recruiters when they reach out, or will that hurt my chances in the future? I get a lot of recruiter spam on LinkedIn.
You can ignore it, of course. I would say take a second look at the ones who are working for companies you're interested in. So actual recruiters from inside the company, as I said in my presentation, that's when things are serious. Agency recruiters, they may be building up a database of candidates, because they won't just market you to one company. They're going to market you to a number of companies. It depends on how you want to deal with it. Have they looked at your profile? Can you tell that they took the time, look through your profile, understand what you do and where you are in your career and what you might want? The quality of their outreach should determine how you prioritize responding to them or not. That would be my advice.
Yeah, thank you. That's actually really good advice, because a lot of it is, yeah, you know, they haven't read your profile.
Yeah, I get those too. Especially when it's a job like, I've never done that. I don't think I could do that. That's the really bad ones. But yes, I get those too. Yeah. Now, there could be an instance where maybe they haven't taken a deep dive in your profile, but the company and the job is something you're really interested in. Why not? I mean, I've landed a job that way. It wasn't a deep dive in my profile, but the company and the role was really interested, so I started a conversation. So
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There is one more question.
Okay.
From Mariska. Do you think recruiters will contact someone you have been working for or with in the past?
In what way?
Hi, Mariska, are you there?
I don't understand the question.
I guess let's get back to this question maybe in the networking section. For now,
Yeah,
it would be nice to take a break. Thank you, Sharon. Thanks a lot for the tips. I do see more things coming from Mariska.
Yeah.
Mariska, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah. In your former
Yeah.
job.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
I was just wondering if, for example, if you're applying for a job, is it normal, or is it something that recruiters do to contact people they know, or your former employee and ask how you are when you are at work?
No, that's not normal at all.
I think if I can
Yeah, I think that Sabina should handle that one.
I think it's going to happen when you already had an interview. They're going to check your background if you give somebody they can reach out to. But I don't think a recruiter will do that
No, a lot of times we're not the ones that do background checking, and I've only had that come up when I've either had an offer or they're about to give an offer. Isn't that correct, Sabine? It's not until you get to that point.
Yeah.
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 Most times I have been asked for the references myself, and then I can pick people whom I feel or I'm more confident with. And those are the names I give. So, yeah.
Unless you're with a company that demands it be a former manager and they won't accept anyone else. I've seen that too. So.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I had that myself. So, yeah.
Thankfully, I can easily give the manager's contact details.
Not that it was a problem. I'm just saying that I've actually seen a reference form like that you know there was no choice. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. Thanks, Mariska. We have more questions pouring in, but I think now we will take a break and we'll answer them offline. So let's catch back again at 8:07, ladies. Please take a break and see you all really quickly.
Okay. Tot straks.
Tot snel. Thanks, Sharon. Sharon, since you're back, there was a very interesting question.
Okay.
In the chat for you, for above 60 people who are, what will be the best advice to get recruiters' attention for a 60+ woman CV?
Okay. So the question is, do you want them to know you're 60+? If not, you need to cut down how much experience you have in your CV and on your LinkedIn profile. Don't use dates that go back beyond a certain point. This also applies to your educational, don't put dates on your education. Yeah. Make sure your date of birth is not to be found on any social media platform if you're trying to conceal it.
I'm not sure if the person is in or not, so it would be nice.
I don't know either.
Reply in the chat.
Oh, okay. So let me move my keyboard because it's an awkward angle to type. So I was trying not to let the camera go too far away. Okay, let me see, 60+. Okay, that's the first comment. I'm going to add some, but That's if you're wanting, if you don't want them to know you're 60 plus. If you don't care, then this doesn't apply. Although I think 10 to 15, I think 15 years more than that, unless you're going for something that's in research where they want 20 plus, or high management where I've actually seen and recruited a job description that required 20 plus on something. Otherwise, I would advise to do this. Don't cut it back too far back because it will be unbelievable, but I think 10 to 15 years is probably okay. And let's see, applies to your LinkedIn. What else was I going to write? I'm blanking now. But yeah, so that would be what I would do. Oh, yes, hold on. Got my cap locks on.
All right, 8:10, checking in if Sabina is back. I see her.
Yes, I'm here.
All right, let's start. Ladies, hope you all were able to capture some moments of shaking that leg off and back with us with full mind and full soul. So let's start back. I will quickly introduce Sabina. You look lovely, Sabina.
Thank you.
So we are talking to Sabina Klei. She has worked in healthcare, education, and she is currently working as an HR advisor. She likes to support people in their careers, and she stands for equal opportunities and works hard to realize that for herself and for others. She strongly believes that knowledge is power, and she wishes for everyone to have that. After saying that, Sabina, the floor is yours. Please share your insights with all of us.
Thank you. Thank you, Kanika, for this lovely introduction. Well, I hope everybody had a great time with Sharon because she had a good story. I prepared a presentation to share with you guys. I would like to start with that. And after that, I have recorded an interview with a colleague. There we go into the the questions in the interview, so job interview. And after that, I have a few quiz questions, and there's a lot of time for Q&As after that. So I'm starting to share my screen. Here it is. Yes. All right. I would like to start with the highlights of a job interview. I think a lot of people struggle with it. So where to begin? I think if you want to prepare for an interview, you can divide an interview in 3 steps. And I would like to take you with me in the 3 steps. So it's obviously that you should sell yourself in an interview. So it's good that you know some positive features about yourself, but also some features that you need to develop. But it's also, the next thing is also really good to know what makes you unique. For example, for me, what makes me unique, I'm really good in organizing. I can deal with stressful situations, but in the meanwhile, I can still be in touch with the people I work with. So I really know what's going on in my organization. Those 3 things together makes me unique in my position. But there's also one other thing, and that is what gives you energy. I would like to ask you guys if you can think back of the moment that you had really a rough day or a hard day, but you still went home and felt really energetic.
You want the responses in the chat?
No, I think maybe we can come into that later, but I'm gonna respond to it myself. I gonna be my own example because I looked into that. Where's my energy coming from? As Kanika just said, I worked in healthcare with the youth, but I also worked in elementary school as a teacher. and now is an HR advisor. And if you look in the highlights what is connecting those different kind of jobs, it's education and development. So it's like helping develop younger people, but also the people where I'm working with now. So in my job, I'm working on an education platform, and it gives me really a lot of joy to see people that can develop themselves, and I can give them a tool to make them better in life or in their job. So that's where I get my energy from. So I'm really curious where you get your energy from, but maybe we can come to that later on. The next step, I think Sharon already pointed it out, that you should choose a job where you have something to learn. So choose something where you can think that you can do the 80% of the things that are in the vacancy, but there should be also room for you to learn. So yeah, then you come together. If you connect the dots together, you come to your story. And I think if you know your story, then you can answer the question that are a lot of HR advisors or hiring managers are asking in a job interview, and that is the question, can you tell me something about yourself? And I also know that a lot of people struggle with this question. And if you connect all the three things, like what did you experience in other jobs and in your life? So if you have that, and what makes you unique and what gives you energy, if you connect those three things together, then you have a great story to share. So if you prepare it like that, I think you can be able to respond to this question in a good way. All right, that were the 3 steps, but I also have some last tips. Yeah, I think it's very important that you make sure your personal features match the company culture. If you look at it like it's 2 basic personalities, you have people who are always looking for changes and want to develop stuff and be really looking to a flexible role. But you also have people who are really driving with structure, I think if their job description is clear, what their future is looking in the next 2 or 3 years, and what is expected from them. But those 2 kind of people you have to figure out where the company is in at the moment that you are applying, because some companies are in a development, and it can be that you are applying to a role that is still in a stage that it needs to be developed. So on the way that you are growing in the role, it's getting more and more clear what you're going to do. But it's not. It asks from you that you should be flexible in that role. But that is not what kind of character you are, you're going to be miserable, I think, in a year, half a year. So you should look to that and make sure if the company matches your personality. What also I think is also really good that you, when you have the interview, you also ask if you at least can meet one of the team members, because you have to work with the team members. So, and I think you're going to be there 40 hours a week. So I think you should know where you're getting into. So that's a really important thing. And the last, be prepared to tell about one of your failures and what did you learn from it. Because when you have room for your development and you know how to learn from your mistakes, it gives the hiring manager a good insight on what kind of person you are. So, well, that was the presentation. I'm gonna stop this presentation, and now we're gonna move on to the recorded interview. I recorded an interview with my colleague, Alexandra Noguera. She's already also, I think I saw her. She was willing to help me because, sorry, I thought I heard something. She was willing to help me. I hired her, I think, 4 months ago. So I think it's a good thing that we can do. All right.
Welcome, Alexandra.
To introduce yourself and tell a little bit about your background, and then we move forward to a question that we using, well, that's been used in the Netherlands for job interviews, and I think a lot of people are struggling with that. So, can you start with your background story? I think that will people can relate to that. So
of course, thank you of course for the invitation to the interview. It's very nice. I'm very excited. And my name is Alexandra Noguera. I'm originally from Venezuela, from Latin America, and almost half of my job experience has been there. The other half here in Holland. My background has been always in the technical field, let's say, environment. I've been working in the past in Venezuela for companies related with engines and very, very technical issues or subjects. So I've been always around that. I am a mechanical engineer, so I always look forward to that kind of position or kind of job, let's say. In the beginning, I did quite a lot of interviews because for me, it was important to have the practice, the experience. It was the first time for me going abroad, going out of Venezuela. So I didn't have a clue how the interview would be going, what was normal, what was the typical questions, why are they asking this, what do they expect me to reply. I didn't know any of those things. So for me, it was very important that I took as many interviews as I could just to practice. Even sometimes I will say that I took jobs interviews in companies that I didn't feel working. I didn't feel that much connection, or that I felt like, okay, this is not my job, my perfect job, let's say. But I will go to the interview and I will just experience that. That's gonna be knowledge, and that's gonna be super helpful for that person who is looking for a job. And if you close yourself to that experience, then you might be missing something, or you need to prepare yourself for that. And I think the best way is also, besides researching and reading and studying, is also practicing. So just go, do it, do your best. If they call you back, awesome. But
And if you look back to all the job interviews that you did, what was the question that you struggled the most with?
I will say when they ask you what will be a good point of you, like a good asset. Or like, what are you good at, or what are you bad at? Where is your up and down? Those kind of questions can be very tricky. I think, because, well, you need to think about what do they really need to hear? What are they looking for in that question? They're not looking for to see if you are good as a wife, or if you're good cooking, or doing sports. They want to go to the point. They want to know if you can be suitable for this position in specific. So if you are good with stress, if you can handle a lot of work, or if you can be a team player, those kind of things. So you really have to focus on that. So I think in the beginning, that kind of question was kind of difficult for me. Because like I said, you need to be to the point.
Yeah, you need to put those.
And it's always hard to talk about. Yeah, and it's always hard, right? To when somebody asks you, okay, give me some bad point about you. It's always a little bit hard to maybe admit that you have a bad side.
Yeah, well, you can also address it as need more attention to develop.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I was gonna also mention that you shouldn't put it as a bad, like, oh yeah, I have this flaw. I am a messy person. No, you need to try to bring it up as a, okay, I'm not the most organized person.
Yeah.
I'm working on it. I've been doing this and this and that to improve.
Yeah.
So that changed the whole, the input in that person who is asking you the question. So
yeah. And I also had this question that I think people are struggling with is the big question. Can you tell something about yourself? You already told me something about that you had a book with all the questions that you collect from all the job interviews, and can you share there a little bit more with us how you manage that question?
Yeah, it was indeed a very tricky and difficult question. When they ask you, can you tell me about yourself? You're always in doubt. You're always like, okay, what should I say? In the beginning, it was very hard for me. I think I was all over the place when they asked me when they asked me that question. And like I told you, yes, I did a lot of research. I noticed in that moment that I needed to educate myself in this. And I think that's what everybody should do. You should look and read what is the best way to reply to these kind of questions, so you are prepared for it. I didn't have a book with a bunch of possible questions, a bunch of possible answers. Too bad I was looking for it. I couldn't find it. We moved recently, so we have still a lot of boxes around. So it was a little bit hard for me to find it. But I think the best advice I can give is to, again, focus yourself in that particular company that you're having the interview with, in that particular job position. So when they ask you, okay, can you tell me about yourself? You need to bring up your past work experience and your previous, let's say, life event that has something to do with this, that has something to do with this company, something to do with this job position. So that's why it's also very important to really research before you go to an interview. What is that job? What are they looking for? Or do those questions during the meeting, during the interview.
You can also call the HR department and ask those questions before you go to the interview.
Exactly. Like, for example, for me, it was a very important connect. Okay, this is a company who is looking for this kind of candidate for this kind of position. It's a technical or whatever kind of company. Okay, I'm gonna tackle that question by trying to connect that, trying to go forward to that. Like, okay, my job experience has been in this and this and that, so that has a meaning for this company. Or you don't have to talk about all the things that you did in the previous job. Just those little things that okay, if I say that I was working with a technical product, they will like that. So then you focus on that.
I think I agree with that. And I think also it's really good that you are that you bring forward your passion, because when you connect the dots throughout your career, you can find the passion. And if you are telling about your passion, most people will light up, and I think that will bring the spark into the interview. So it's really good if you know that about yourself.
Exactly, definitely.
How did you do that with? Because I have had my interview with you. So how did you do that in your interview? Because you were able to do it. To bring your passion across the conversation, and I recognize it with you because you are also lighting up. Did you do that on purpose, or were you aware of that you were doing it? Or
I think a little bit of everything. I think it's a little bit on purpose, a little bit of it is there. Also a little bit of confidence selling yourself. You have to be confident on yourself. You have to know that, okay, this is my passion, this is what I'm looking for, and there you go. Just put it on the table and they will see it. But if you keep it for yourself, or if you're shy, or you show like, okay, I'm not sure what I'm doing here, or I'm not sure how to reply, that's not gonna bring.
All right. Thank you. That was the interview. And then I have something else to share with you. I'm gonna move this up. This is not working like I want to. I would like to invite you to participate and go to w.menti.com and use the code 547077. It's on top of the screen. I'm gonna figure out if I can go back, because this is Kanika. Oh yeah. Well, this was the first question. So we have 26 participants. I hope everybody is getting in. And I think it's a good thing to know that there is no good or a bad answer. It's all good. But I'm really curious about what you think of it.
Is everyone able to join, Menti? You can send a direct message to us in case you can't. We can help.
Shall we go on to the next question? Kanika?
Yes, let's do that.
All right. What information would you like to have before you enter a job interview? More information about the company, more information about the role, more information about the manager. More information about the role. That's the biggest one that are. Yeah. Okay.
We also have prompts in the chat where people are specifically Julia says that she would like to know more about the culture of the company.
The culture of the company. All right. And how yeah, in what kind of way? Because how can you get to know them, get more information about the company culture, or in what way is the question, Julia?
Well, actually, how is the team? How is the cohesion in between the team? How that's working? If it's a nice environment to work in, or if there is kind of, I don't know, some kind of toxicity there. Perhaps it's difficult to get that information from an interview, especially if it's the first one, but yeah.
I think if you are trying to get also to meet a team member, that's something that you can ask, how is that person, how long is he or she working there? How has she experienced the culture company? Because when you're in the future maybe gotta be colleagues, people in the team are mostly more honest about what is going on in the culture than managers of the department, or it depends on the hiring manager, but or the HR. But I think if you are meeting up with somebody from the team, you can ask those questions, and I think you get a pretty straight answer. And I think a good question, I had it 2 years ago. Somebody asked me, what is your recent and your biggest problem in the company? And I was the hiring manager, and I was like, okay, yeah, good question. But he really got into the core directly with that question. Is that a good enough answer for you, Julia?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
All right. More questions? I think if I look to the Mentimeter feedback, the biggest part voted for more information about the role. I think if you want to have more information, if it is about the company, the role, or I think the company and the role, I think you can reach out to the HR department or the recruiter to find out more information. But in my experience, if they want to see you for the interview, I think they don't want to give you all the information because they want to see you in person.
Yes, but it's also nice to, upfront prepare for these questions, because I also know that sometimes you go to an interview and if you're not prepared to ask these questions, then you're given the opportunity, this nice opportunity where the recruiter says, okay, do you have questions for us? So that's the point, or that's the place where you would start asking these kind of questions, right? Yeah. We have a question from Mariska in the chat. Sabina, if you're ready to answer.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, so Mariska says how deep you need to dive into the company and the business they are in before the job interview, and what is the ultimate question to ask the recruiter when you are at the job interview about the company?
I think it really depends on what role you're gonna work in. If you're really going for a technical role, I advise you to dive deep into the company and the company. What are they making, or what are you gonna make in your function or your job? But I think if you're gonna go there for for example, for an HR advisor role, that's something else. But then you should really ask questions about where is this company at and in which stage is it. That's more about where is it suitable for my my career path and more compatible with my personality. So and what's the ultimate question? I think I gave it away already. What is your biggest what is the biggest problem that you are working on right now in the company, and how you're dealing with it, and how long is it already there? Because it gives you a really good indicator of if they're dealing with the problems and how they deal with the problems, and if it's an environment where you want to work.
All right. Do you have more questions, Sabina, from the Mentimeter?
No, I just had two.
Okay, I guess then we open the floor for questions.
Yeah. I'm gonna take a sip of my tea.
In the video you mentioned, if I may ask, in the video, in your conversation, you mentioned that you have to turn your, let's say, not so good points positively, or just turn them around and present it differently. So what are the top ways that you see that happening? I mean, we all have our own flaws, or let's say our own drawbacks.
Yeah.
So we can prepare all we want for it, or at least these are the questions I expect, and I try to prepare upfront. But you have examples for us how we can use some of these and turn them around?
Good question. Well, I think Alexandra already pointed out, if you're really a messy person or you're trying to develop that into be a more organized person. What I see that people give examples from projects that they are working on, and try to figure out a problem and don't ask for help. I think a lot of people do that. And I think if you know that you are doing that you just try to find a solution on your own, and it takes a lot longer than when you ask the help more in front. I think if you turn that around and you say something like, well, I'm really eager to find out my own solution, but I have learned that I should ask for help earlier on the stage, then I think then you make it something positive, and that is still a learning curve.
Thanks, Sabina. Another interesting question from Marcia.
Mm-hmm.
How do you advise someone to approach sensitive subjects in job interviews or in your preparation?
I think it really depends on the connection that you have in the interview. For my experience, with some people, you have a connection right away, and I think you can feel it if you are if it is more easy to share sensitive information. And if you don't feel comfortable, don't share it if you're not comfortable with it. Is that an answer that you were looking for, Marcia?
Marcia's on mute.
Yeah, sorry. No, the reason why I asked is because some things, like I was saying earlier on, you can't find on a website. So how do you approach that, and how do you find out that culture? Specifically, some companies I know have a very outspoken or very strong ties to different sectors, like they're either very religious or they're very and they're very vocal about that. But there's also some things that you don't know. So do you suggest that someone, when you start out, already ask those questions, or do you first go for the first interview?
I should. I think I should wait if you're in the interview, and there is always a moment that they will ask you if you have questions, and then you can ask a little bit about the company culture, and and maybe you can you can say something about, like, well, I heard or I have seen that you are pretty vocal about, or made a statement about some religious group. Can you explain a little bit more how is this coming back in culture? I think in the first interview, you're really trying to find out if you're going to be a match, and it has to be a match for you too. So it's really important that you always also know where you want to start or don't want to start.
Yeah, it's just from personal experience, it's difficult. And it gets difficult, especially if you're looking at websites of companies where you think, oh, this is definitely a company I want to work for, when you search for policies or things like that, and you don't find it. And when you ask the recruiter, so what is the viewpoint of the company on this subject, then they don't really have a proper answer. So yeah, it's always good. That's why I put on more information about the company, not what you read on the WhatsApp, but actually how people are, things that are not always so openly found.
Yeah, I think, and what I mentioned earlier, if you go to the interview and ask to meet a member of the team, I think if you meet the hiring manager, you meet somebody from HR and also somebody from the team, you get a pretty good insight if there are gaps between people. And if you see gaps, then you should ask yourself, well, where's this gap coming from?
Yeah, I agree. For me, I just have done so much research on all of it. So some of the websites that people are putting up has been there. I spent a lot of time in my previous search for the current position I have, researching the companies that I had applied for. Something that Sharon also said, keep a list of who you have applied to and everything like that, so that you can get it. Yeah, it's real interesting sometimes what you can find out from a company by asking them about their policies with regard to, sick leave, also what they state on their policies, or what they affiliated to.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I think Alexandra raised her hand. Alexandra, you want to say something?
Yes, I can you hear me?
Yes.
Nice. Thank you. Yeah, it's a very interesting what Marcia was telling about, and it just got my attention. Like when you are that kind of, for example, Sabine, that I don't know if you ever had something like this, but well, you actually mentioned a few minutes ago that someone asked you in a job interview, like, hey, what is your biggest problem right now, and how are you dealing with it? That's a very sensitive question. Maybe also if you go into policies and how the company details, like very, very sensitive. How do you see this person? Like, is that a good thing to approach? Like, how do I explain myself? Like, if I do those questions, would you see me like, oh, this girl is a little bit problematic because she's asking all these sensitive questions, or it is actually okay? And
yeah, I can only speak from my own experience and how I see it. But when this happened, when this guy asked me this question, I'm like, whoa.
I can imagine.
But yeah, later on I thought, well,
it's a bold move.
I think it's a bold question, but it's also really a good question, because in 5 minutes he knew everything he needed to know, and much respect for that. You don't have
definitely
just have that in 5 minutes.
Yes. Okay.
So I think because I also look from the other side, because what I just mentioned, you are looking for a match for the both of you. So I can imagine that the other person also wants to know where he's going to and what he's starting to in. And I am in the company, so I know, but the other person doesn't know. So
that's actually a very nice thing to have the courage to do it, because in my case, I always feel a little bit intimidated when I go to an interview, and I always feel like, oh, I don't want to sound rude, or I don't want these people to think that I'm being, you know, a little bit aggressive or rude or whatever. So these kind of questions it got my attention because I thought like, oh, okay. I think I will never be that bold or that brave to make a question like that, but it's good to know that it's not bad seen. Of course, I guess it depends how you bring it.
Yeah, I think you should build up to that question. It's not like you can get
like,
this
hello.
question. Oh, by the way, what kind of problems you are dealing with?
Yes,
but,
exactly.
Yeah, if you build up to that and connect it to the culture or to the team, yeah, it's fine.
Can I make a comment on that from my own experience? The person you want to ask that is your direct manager, and see how they react, because that's going to tell you a lot too. Beyond what they say, how they react to the question is going to tell you what that relationship's going to be like over time.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. I think somebody wants to say something.
Yeah.
Please go on.
Just a follow-up question on this. So is it okay to say no to a sensitive question? So if I'm not comfortable answering something, is it all right to say no to the recruiter?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you can say, I'm not comfortable to answer this question. But as an HR advisor, then I'm gonna ask, okay, can you share something about why does it feel so sensitive for you, or why don't you feel secure enough to share this? What is it about our conversation?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've not faced it at the moment, but I've heard from my connections, like sometimes companies do profiling on the basis of age, on the basis of you could probably go on a maternity leave or something, which is, I feel, very personal and totally like, it's my life. I should be able to do what I want to do with it. But how to avoid situations where you can be profiled against getting that job?
Yeah, well, profiling is, I think, a hard thing to deal with because it happens. And yeah, I'm gonna speak from my experience. I try not to do, but maybe sometimes I do it also. I don't, but not on purpose. But yeah, for me, it's more about the connection and the spark that I see in the interview. But to go back to your question, how to avoid it? I think if you just mentioned that, you don't feel comfortable to share it, but I know in Holland it's not allowed to ask if you have a wish for a baby, but I don't know how it is anywhere else.
Well, Sabine, I did experience that in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
The manager asked me, "Do you have plans?" Because I think 4 ladies were pregnant.
Yeah, it's not legal to ask that.
Yeah, it's not it's not legal to ask, but I know it happens. But there are also a lot of cases that go to court if you got fired because you were pregnant or whatever related to that. So I think you can answer with that. The question that you're asking is illegal.
Yeah, that's a good way to make sure you don't go to the next round, though. I've been asked illegal questions, and and here's the thing: as a recruiter, if a recruiter is asking another recruiter an illegal question, that tells me if I'm working for your company, you're going to expect me to do the same thing, and I'm not going to.
Yeah.
So
yeah, well, in the end, is it that the question? If you want to work at a company that is doing
that wants me to break the law, so yeah. What you could say that's a little less direct. I don't know, it's a little less harsh. You could say, how is that relevant for the job?
Yeah, good one.
It's less in your face than that's illegal, because we all know it's illegal. How is that relevant for the job? Turn it back on them.
Yeah.
Nice one, Sharon.
Nice one, Sharon. My approach was a little bit more Dutch, but a little bit more way, but I agree. Sharon?
Yeah, I think also Julia asked a question related to what you just said, Sabine. Is it also related with the country or culture you're working in? Because in Spain, I don't see that as a good point, but Dutch people are normally more direct.
Yeah. Yeah, I can only speak from my point of view.
Well, I can speak from my experience in South Africa, and all of the questions that you're not allowed to ask in Holland are openly asked. And it's also culturally, how can I put it this way? If you don't have your date of birth on your CV, you will not even get into the front door.
Yeah.
It even became so bad that they also wanted race on your CV. So yeah, it does depend on culture and everything, and it also depends on. So I've been in situations like everybody else's where you've been asked personal questions like, do you have family, or do you have children or whatever. And normally what I do to sort of like kill that sort of line of questioning is I open up with, I'm single and I don't have children. Then you don't get that question and it's over and done with, which means that, yeah, it's not always easy. And also you might not feel comfortable saying that to, especially if you're being interviewed by in high-tech companies, generally your hiring manager is male, and the person that's doing the second interview is probably also going to be male, and your team member might also be male. It's not always easy to answer those type of questions, but yeah, it just depends on your gut feeling when you walk into the interview. I've walked into some interviews where I've just sort of like, okay, I'm going to answer the questions that I have to answer because I really don't want to be here. And that's also a question I have. Can you walk out of an interview and say, look, this is not for me while you're in the interview?
I never have experienced that, but yeah, sometimes you don't feel the click, and it's both ways. Yeah, out of courtesy, you end it nicely, but make the conversation shorter than it was planned.
Yeah, because like I said, I've been in some interviews where I've got to the point where, no, this is just too much stress. I don't want to work here. Or like Sharon says, you get asked one of those questions and you're thinking, okay, well, what's the relevance? Is this something that is normal that you get asked this and all of that type of thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great.
Thanks for the interesting Q&A. I just noticed that we are almost going to be overshooting the time. So considering that, let's connect with each other over LinkedIn. And before we log out of this session, one question to all of you. What is your takeaway from today's session? And if you could join Menti again and quickly throw in your opinions here, that would be great. The code is changed, so it would be 88534804.
The code is also in the chat if you're accessing from your web browser, from your laptop, so you can just quickly copy paste it.
Thanks, Angela. All right, and while we see all the things pouring in, keep an eye on this and do connect with us in case you have specific questions, and we will try to help you out. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening. Enjoy your night.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.